The mud came down in one gray-brown sheet over the frosting. Over the wobbly number 8, my son had piped with his tongue between his teeth. Over 2 days of butter and armake and a dead man's handwriting. The candles went out under it. One of them snapped. A little girl from Caleb's class screamed the short kind. More surprise than fear, and then the whole backyard went silent, the way a theater goes silent. Caleb didn't make a sound. That was the worst part. He just looked at the cake and then at me, doing that math kids do. Waiting for an adult to tell him how bad this actually was. And into that silence, from 3 feet behind me, came one sound. My sister laughing. Vanessa laughed, the way you laugh at a sitcom, head back, hand flat on her chest. Sunglasses finally coming off so she could wipe her eyes. Kids, right, she said to the whole yard, inviting everyone to join. Nobody joined. One mother from Caleb's class picked up her purse in slow motion. My father studied the grass like it owed him money. Madison stood frozen with the empty bucket, and the look on her face wasn't triumph, it was somebody waiting to find out if the check had cleared. And then my mother stepped forward, took one look at the ruined cake and her grandson's white face, and delivered the line she'd apparently brought with her. It's just cake, Sophia, don't make it a thing. That cake came from no bakery, it was my late husband's chocolate recipe. The one my son and I baked together every June from a card written in his father's own hand. David's handwriting slants uphill like he was always in a hurry to get to the good part. Caleb traces the letters while the oven It's the closest thing to a hug his father can still give him. My name is Sophia Parker. I'm 36 years old. And I watched my 12-year-old niece dump a bucket of garden mud on my son's birthday cake while my sister laughed. Everyone in that backyard expected me to wipe it up, smooth it over, and keep the peace, because keeping the peace was my job in this family. Instead, that night, I opened a spreadsheet I had been afraid of for 4 years. By 6 o'clock the next morning, one email made every adult in my family understand exactly what my kindness had been costing them. And what happened at my mother's dinner table 2 weeks later, none of them saw that coming. Welcome back to Calm Drama Vault, where quiet strengths finally gets its say, and good people stop paying for bad behavior. If you've ever been the one who holds a whole family together, this story was made for you. Drop the word mud in the comments below and subscribe, because you won't want to miss how this one ends. Let me take you back to who I was before the bucket. I live in Dayton, Ohio, in a small brick house with a backyard just big enough for a folding table and a sprinkler. I'm a CPA. I own a 4-person accounting firm called Parker & Associates, and I reconcile other people's bad decisions for a living. Numbers behave for me. People are harder. 4 years ago, my husband, David, was driving home on I-75 when a truck crossed the median. By dinner time, I was a widow with a 4-year-old. Caleb is 8 now. He's quiet like his dad, obsessed with dinosaurs, and every June, we do the same thing David started on his first birthday. We take down a dented tin box. We pull out a recipe card with butter stains on the corners, and we bake his father's chocolate cake. I tell you all this so you understand something about me. I'm careful. I check my locks. I check my math. I check my mirrors twice. In 8 years of running my firm, I have never missed a filing deadline, but there was one account I refused to look at too closely. One column I never added up, and it had my family's name on it. In my defense, I'm told grief does that. It makes you pay any invoice that promises the people you love will stay close. That was my first mistake, and I made it every single month for 4 years. It started 3 weeks after David's funeral, the way these things always start. Small. My sister Vanessa mentioned that Madison's tennis club was raising rates, and wasn't it a shame a talent like that might have to quit? I set up an auto-pay that night, $650 a month straight to the club, quiet as a heartbeat. Then Madison needed a phone for tournaments, so I added a line to my family plan, $85 a month. Then summer camp because every serious junior player goes to camp. Then Vanessa's transmission died and she couldn't get Madison to practice, so I covered the repair. Then groceries here, an electric bill there, always framed as a bridge to somewhere. Nobody ever called it what it was. My mother called it family. I called it temporary. And temporary turned 4 years old. Here's the part I want you to sit with because it matters later. I'm an accountant. I saw every charge. I built the spreadsheet myself. One tab labeled family. Every payment logged with a date and a memo because my hands can't not do that. But I never once hit sum on purpose. Some numbers change what you're allowed to keep believing. And I needed to believe I was helping. I also need you to know why I stayed in it. My parents picked Caleb up from school every Tuesday during tax season. My mother kept a booster seat in her car. Caleb has no other grandparents, no cousins on his father's side. Nobody. When your child's entire family tree fits on one branch, you pay to keep that branch green. There is a number at the bottom of that column. I promise I'll tell you when I finally looked at it. To explain my sister, I have to explain the sentence my family runs on. Vanessa is 39, 3 years older than me, and for one shining decade, she was the most important thing in the state of Ohio, at least at our dinner table. Junior tennis rankings, trophies on the mantle, a coach who called her a comet. Then at 19, her shoulder gave out mid-serve at a qualifier in Cincinnati, and the comet landed in a dental office, answering phones part-time. She married a man named Rick Hale, who left before their daughter turned 5. Madison is 12 now, and here's the complicated truth. The girl is actually good. Her serve is real. Her footwork is real. Her coaches aren't lying to anyone, which made everything so much easier for my mother, Linda, because it let her say the sentence again. She said it at Easter, holding up a tournament photo like a stock certificate. This family invests in its stars. My mother was a PTA treasurer for 20 years. She keeps books on everything, including love. And in her ledger, some children are assets and some children are overhead. I grew up hearing that sentence, and I knew it by heart. What I never told anyone, all those years I was quietly paying for lessons and camps and phone lines, was which side of that sentence I grew up on. I wasn't the star. I was the one who made her own dinner during tournament season, who learned that being low maintenance was the same as being loved, at least in our house. You can move out of your childhood home, and you can even buy your own. The house you grew up in still gets a vote. Mine had been voting for 4 years, $650 at a time. The Sunday before Caleb's birthday, I got invited to dinner at my mother's house, and the invitation should have come with a prospectus. The pot roast was on the table, and next to the gravy boat sat a glossy brochure: Meridian Tennis Academy, full-time training, elite pathway, $25,000 a year. My mother didn't slide it toward me until the plates were cleared, which is how I knew it was the whole point of the meal. Madison needs this, she said. The club has taken her as far as it can. Vanessa leaned back with her arms crossed and skipped the sales pitch entirely. You have it, she said. We both know you have it. There it was. The family math spoken out loud for once. Whether I had, it was never the question. I run a small firm in a mid-sized city. I have a mortgage, a college fund for a boy whose father is gone, and one income to cover the rest of both our lives. I looked at the brochure and I looked at my mother, and for the first time in 4 years, I heard myself say it. My answer is no. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list my reasons. Because reasons are just handles for other people to pull. The kitchen went so quiet I could hear the dishwasher change cycles. Vanessa stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, which in a way I had. And my mother didn't argue at all. She folded the brochure closed, patted it once like a well-behaved pet, and said, "Well, we'll see. Here's something you should know about my family. We'll see was never surrender. We'll see was a countdown." The week that followed had a temperature. Texts that used to come with heart emojis arrived, like meeting minutes. Vanessa unfollowed me on everything, which at 39 is apparently how war is declared. My mother went with a more classic weapon. Tuesday. She sent me a photo of Madison mid-serve at the club, ponytail flying, and underneath it, a caption engineered in a lab to hurt. She asks why Aunt Sophia doesn't believe in her. I read that text in my office parking lot and sat there a long time. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about saying no to your family for the first time. You don't feel powerful. You feel like you've broken a machine everyone else still lives inside. And you can hear the parts grinding from every direction. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. I finally sent back a single line that I loved Madison and my answer hadn't changed. And I got back a thumbs up from my own mother. A thumbs up. Still, that Thursday, I sat at my kitchen table and addressed birthday invitations by hand. Dinosaur stickers on green envelopes. One for my parents, one for Vanessa and Madison. Caleb stood at my elbow, supervising the sticker placement. He asked if Madison was coming for sure, because Madison was the only kid who ever played the games he invented without changing the rules. That's the sentence that got them invited. If I'm honest, not the piece I was keeping with the adults. A boy who wanted his cousin there. I licked those envelopes myself and dropped them at the post office on my lunch break, sometimes late at night. I still think about that little errand and how carefully I mailed the invitations to my son's worst day. Friday night before the party, Caleb and I baked the cake. If you'd stood at my kitchen window, you'd have seen the whole religion of it. The dented tin box comes down from the top shelf. The card comes out chocolate smudge in the corner from David's thumb. That uphill handwriting racing toward the good part. Caleb reads the steps out loud like scripture. Even though we both know them cold. 2 rounds, real butter, the frosting you have to stir until your arm complains. David used to say the armache was the secret ingredient. And Caleb repeats that joke every year at the exact same moment. And every year I laugh like it's new because that's the deal. While the layers cooled, Caleb sat on the counter and asked me one of those questions kids keep in their back pockets for late at night. Do you think Dad knows I'm 8 now? I said I thought dads always know. He nodded, very serious, and piped the number 8 onto the middle of the cake himself, wobbly and proud, tongue between his teeth. We stood back and admired it the way you'd admire a bridge you'd built together. Saturday's plan was simple and perfect. The way 8-year-old plans are. 6 friends from school, a dinosaur banner we'd painted ourselves. Hot dogs, a sprinkler if it got hot, family at 2, cake at 3. He taped the schedule to the fridge. He's my son, after all, and went to bed early without being asked, which is how excited he was. The cake sat overnight in the center of the refrigerator on the good glass stand, and I slept well. It was the last good sleep I'd get for a month. Saturday came in sunny and ordinary. By noon, the backyard looked like a natural history museum with balloons. 6 kids from Caleb's class arrived in a wave of gift bags. And for an hour, my biggest problem was hot dog logistics. My family showed up at 2 on schedule, which was my first clue something was off. Vanessa is never on time. She came through the gate in sunglasses she never took off, carrying a gift bag with the tag still on it. My father, Frank, gave Caleb a 2-armed hug and posted himself by the grill where the conversation can't reach you. And my mother arrived, sweet. If you have a mother like mine, you just shivered. She complimented my hair. She complimented the banner. She called the backyard charming twice. The way a realtor does before telling you what the house is actually worth. Madison drifted in last. Earbuds in, and I remember thinking she looked less sulky than usual. She looked nervous. She kept orbiting the flower bed along the back fence. The one I'd watered that morning, where the soil goes dark and soft. At one point, I looked up from the lemonade and saw her at the fence with my mother. Heads close, my mother's hand smoothing her ponytail while she talked. It pinged something in me, low and quiet, like a smoke alarm chirping in another room. I ignored it. Hosting is the art of ignoring your own alarms. Around 2:30, Madison appeared at my elbow, polite as a hotel clerk, and asked what time we were cutting the cake. 3 o'clock, I told her. She nodded and checked her watch. 12 years old, and she checked her watch. At 3 o'clock, I carried the cake out on the glass stand, and the backyard did that thing backyards do, everybody pulling in toward the table like the tide coming in. Caleb stood at the head of the table in his dinosaur shirt, vibrating. I lit the candles, all 8 plus 1 to grow on, and the kids started jockeying for cake-adjacent seating. I went inside for the camera. 15 seconds, maybe 20. When I came back out, Madison was standing at the table. She was holding the little blue bucket from beside the flower bed, the one I use for weeding, and it was full. I remember the details in that too bright way you remember accidents. Her knuckles pale on the handle, her eyes going once quick to the back fence, to my mother, like a swimmer checking the lifeguard, and I remember that she hesitated a full breath, maybe 2, 12 years old, standing between who she was and what she'd been sent to do. Then she turned the bucket over. The mud came down in one gray-brown sheet over the frosting. Over the wobbly number 8 my son had piped with his tongue between his teeth. Over 2 days of butter and armac and a dead man's handwriting. The candles went out under it. One of them snapped. A little girl from Caleb's class screamed, the short kind, more surprise than fear, and then the whole backyard went silent, the way a theater goes silent. Caleb didn't make a sound. That was the worst part. He just looked at the cake and then at me, doing that math kids do, waiting for an adult to tell him how bad this actually was. And into that silence, from 3 feet behind me, came one sound. My sister laughing. Vanessa laughed the way you laugh at a sitcom, head back, hand flat on her chest, sunglasses finally coming off so she could wipe her eyes. Kids, right, she said to the whole yard, inviting everyone to join. Nobody joined. One mother from Caleb's class picked up her purse in slow motion. My father studied the grass like it owed him money. Madison stood frozen with the empty bucket. And the look on her face wasn't triumph, it was somebody waiting to find out if the check had cleared. And then my mother stepped forward. took one look at the ruined cake and her grandson's white face, and delivered the line she'd apparently brought with her. "It's just cake, Sophia, don't make it a thing. I want to be honest about what happened inside me because people imagine rage as hot. Mine wasn't. Mine came in cold, quiet, and extremely organized, like a filing system switching on. But first things first. And the first thing was 8 years old. I went to Caleb, got down on his level, and told him we would fix it. That this was not how the day ended. He nodded, still silent, and let me steer him inside. Behind us, the party was already dissolving. Parents materializing next to their children, thanking me too warmly, herding gift bags toward the gate. Within 20 minutes, the backyard was empty, except for a dinosaur banner and a cake full of garden soil. Here's what I did not do. I did not scream at my sister. I did not say a single word to her, actually, and I'm told by the one relative who still speaks to everyone that my silence scared her more than any screaming would have. That evening, the house was too quiet. I scraped the ruined cake into the trash, washed the glass stand, and found Caleb sitting cross-legged on his bed, holding the recipe tin like it was a passport out of the day. He wasn't crying anymore. He'd done that in the bathroom with the fan on because he's 8 and already thinks he has to protect me, which is a whole other conversation I have with the ceiling some nights. He looked up and said the thing I knew was coming. It was Dad's cake. Mom, she put mud on Dad's cake. Not my cake. Dad's, and I heard myself doing what I always did so smoothly, so automatically that it frightened me later. I heard myself say, "It's okay, honey. Madison made a bad choice. We'll bake another one bigger this weekend." Smoothing. Translating. Prepaying everyone's consequences the way I'd been doing for 4 years with checks and casseroles, and now with my own son's grief. Caleb was quiet for a minute, running his thumb along the dent in the tin, and I watched him decide something. Kids do their real thinking sideways. You can see it cross their faces like weather. Then he said in the small, careful voice of a boy who wasn't sure if he was allowed to say it, "I don't think it was a choice exactly." I asked him what he meant. He put the tin down, looked at his knees, and told me what he had heard at the back fence 20 minutes before the cake came out. And I want you to hear what my 8-year-old said next in his exact words. Because those words rearranged the next 10 years of my life. He'd gone to the fence to get the soccer ball. Madison and Grandma were on the other side of the lilac bush, and Madison's voice was doing the thing, he said, like when you have to go off the diving board and you don't want to. She said, "You promise, I still get the phone." And Grandma said, "If you do it properly." Then Madison said, "He's just a little kid." And Grandma said, "Whose side are you on?" He came back with the ball and didn't tell me because he thought maybe the phone thing was about chores. Sat on the edge of my son's bed and felt the room reorganize itself around those sentences. Because, look at what they mean. This was no meltdown from a jealous kid, no impulse, no sugar-fueled accident of childhood. There was an offer on the table before it happened. There was a negotiation. There was a price, a brand new phone and a performance standard. Do it properly. And a loyalty clause. Whose side are you on? My mother, who taught Sunday school for 11 years, stood at a fence and closed a deal with a 12-year-old to break an 8-year-old's heart. Over a loan I had every right to refuse, and my sister, whatever she knew in advance, watched the delivery and laughed at the result. Tucked Caleb in. I told him he'd done nothing wrong and that hearing things by accident is never spying. Because I could see him worrying about it. I kissed his forehead, closed his door, walked down my own stairs in the dark, and stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Adults had paid a child to break my child, and they had used my money to do it. It was almost 11 when I opened the laptop on the kitchen table. And I want to describe this properly because from the outside, it looked like nothing. A tired woman, in a quiet house. A screen glowing, a cold cup of tea. On the screen, a spreadsheet named Family. For years of my handwriting, in digital form, every row, a date, an amount. A memo written in the hopeful shorthand of a woman keeping her family green. Club dues, June, Maddie.phone.camp deposit. Van's transmission, don't mention. Groceries, mom's list. I had entered every single line myself and had never once let the cursor touch the bottom of the column. That night, I scrolled slowly all the way down, for years passing under my thumb like mile markers. And then I did the thing I'd been avoiding, since the funeral flowers were still fresh. I clicked the empty cell at the bottom and hit some. Just over $50,000. I sat back and let the number look at me. $50,000. Tennis dues at $650 a month. For years of them. 3 summers of camp at $4,200 each, 2 years of a phone line, a transmission, a river of groceries, and light bills. While I drove a 9-year-old car and told Caleb we'd see about hockey, and floating up out of the arithmetic came my mother's voice from that afternoon. "It's just cake, Sophia." And I finally heard the sentence correctly. She was right. The cake was mud and flour, $30 of ingredients. What she meant was, you'll absorb this like you absorb everything, because that's what you're for. Somewhere along the way, without one conversation, I had stopped being family and become a funding source. Right below that, $50,000 total sat 2 more rows. The ones with future dates. The 2 biggest promises on the books already bought, still waiting to happen, sitting there like unlit candles. Disney, August, camp, July. People imagine revenge as noise slammed doors, screaming matches, wine glasses versus walls. Mine happened between 11:40 and 1 in the morning in a silent kitchen, and the loudest sound was a mouse click. First, the trip. 6 people, Orlando, 5 nights in August, booked and paid by me on my card through the travel portal, $8,700. Because my mother had said family memories are priceless, and then let me price them. The portal asked if I was sure I wanted to cancel. Software has more curiosity about my choices than my family ever had. The $500 deposit was non-refundable, and I paid it gladly. Cheapest tuition of my life. Second, camp, Meridian Summer Intensive, July session, $4,200. Cancelable for a refund minus a $250 registration fee if you gave 21 days notice. I checked the calendar. 23 days. Even my collapse was on schedule. Click third the club. I logged into my bank and switched off the autopay that had run like a heartbeat for 48 months. The button said, "Are you sure?" I have never been more sure of a button. Fourth, the phone. The family plan was mine, my name, my bill. I opened the account and scheduled Madison's line to disconnect at the end of the billing cycle. 2 weeks out. Enough time for Vanessa to port the number if she chose to pay for her own daughter's phone. Which would be a first. I want to be clear about what I felt because it wasn't rage. And I've decided honesty is the whole point of telling you this. It felt like closing a client's books at year-end. Line by line. Clean and final. I wasn't setting anything on fire. I was simply stopping payment on a lie. Let me pause here because I know some of you are sitting where I was sitting. If you have ever stayed up late at a kitchen table, finally adding up what being the reliable one has cost you, put a number in the comments. Just the years it took me for. And subscribe. Because what my family did when the money stopped, you'll want to see where that goes. Back to my kitchen. 1 in the morning. The services were dead. The money was mine again. And there was one thing left to do. The thing that would turn for private clicks into a public fact. I opened a blank email and typed a subject line. A full accounting. I wrote it the way I write to the IRS, which is to say, no adjectives. To Vanessa, copy to mom and dad. No one else. No aunts, no cousins, no audience. Because I wasn't performing. I was filing. It opened with the date and one sentence. After what happened at Caleb's party. I had reviewed for years of my support of this family, and the review was attached below. Then the table. Every row from the spreadsheet. Date. Amount. Memo. 48 months of tennis dues. 3 camps. The phone line. The transmission. The groceries. The electric bills. Subtotaled by year. Totaled at the bottom. The same number that had looked at me across my kitchen. Just over $50. No commentary between the lines. Numbers don't need adjectives. That's why people fear them. And then the closing paragraph. Which I'll give you nearly word for word because I drafted it 11 times and I earned it. Effective today, all of it ends. The Disney trip is canceled. Camp is canceled. The club autopay is off. Madison's phone line ends with the billing cycle. And the number can be moved to your own plan if you wish. My answer on the Academy loan is still no. This is not punishment. This is a closing statement. Accounts close when the terms are violated. And yesterday, at a child's birthday party, they were. I read it twice, changed nothing, and felt the delusion I'd worn for 4 years. The one where the next check would finally buy the thing no check had bought yet, gone, like a coat I'd left at someone's house. I scheduled the email for 6 in the morning, closed the laptop, checked on Caleb, and slept better than I had in 4 years. At 6 in the morning, it went out by 6:40. My phone lit up like a slot machine. I didn't answer the first call or the second or the 6th. I made pancakes. Caleb and I had a sundae to repair, and syrup outranks screaming, but voicemails pile up like snow, and by afternoon, I had the whole morning reconstructed from my sister's messages, each one angrier and more useful than the last. Here's what happened in Vanessa's kitchen. According to Vanessa, who has never in her life understood what she was confessing. Saturday evening, hours after the party, my mother had come by and given Madison the phone. The new one, the big camera, the works purchased on my mother's card, a reward delivered on schedule for services rendered. Do it properly. And she had. So Sunday morning, Madison was leaning against the counter, with her whole life already transferred onto this beautiful object when my email arrived. Vanessa started reading it out loud. She got through the total 50,000 and produced only a scoff. Can you believe your aunt tallying gifts like some kind of accountant? It was the last paragraph that did it. Camp is cancelled. Madison's line ends with the billing cycle. And my niece, holding the reward, learned in one sentence that the currency it was paid in had just died. The phone slipped out of her hands, and the screen met the tile floor. And it made Vanessa said a sound like a windshield. She was screaming at me about that sound, about the cracked screen, about camp, about Disney, about what kind of person emails a spreadsheet. I listened to all of it twice, and I noticed what a person notices at the bottom of $50,000. In 11 minutes of voicemail, my sister never once mentioned the cake. That told me exactly what was coming next. What came next was the family version of a public relations campaign, and my mother ran it like she'd been saving up. Sunday afternoon, she stood on my porch, arms folded, and skipped past 4 years of my money to arrive directly at my cruelty. You are punishing a child, she said. I stood in my own doorway and felt how much practice she had making that sentence land. And for once, I had my reply ready because I'd had all night to close the books. No, Mom, I said, a child got punished the day you hired her. I paid for the party she was hired to ruin. Read the email again. She left without coffee, which in my mother's language is a declaration of war. By midweek, the extended family had received the broadcast version, in which a bucket of mud had shrunk to a little spilled dirt and $50,000 had vanished entirely. My aunt in Columbus texted me, "Family takes care of its own. Sophia." A cousin I hear from at Christmas suggested I think about what stress Vanessa is under. Nobody asked what happened at the party. Nobody asked about Caleb. I want you to notice what I didn't do that week because it cost me something. I didn't forward the email chain to anyone. I didn't post my spreadsheet. I had receipts, literal receipts, and an entire family jury pool. And I let the broadcast version run unopposed because the day you start prosecuting your case to cousins is the day you've joined the circus. Then Sunday night, 1 week after the party, my mother posted in the family group chat, "Dinner at her house. Saturday, all of us. Time to heal this family." I knew that menu. Healing wasn't on it. They didn't wait for Saturday. Wednesday at 11, my office manager buzzed me, said my sister was in the lobby, and my sister had brought reinforcements. Vanessa walked in with Madison in front of her like a shield, or a summons, still in her school clothes, and I understood I was about to watch a play. We sat in my little conference room with the fake plant, and Vanessa nodded at her daughter the way a director cues an actress. Madison folded her hands and recited, "I am sorry my behavior at the party was inappropriate. I take full responsibility for my actions." Every sentence arrived sanded smooth. No mud in it. No cake. No fence. And after each line, her eyes flicked sideways to her mother to see if it was landing. I've sat across from enough audited clients to know a prepared statement when I hear one. When she finished, Vanessa spread her hands like a lawyer resting. "There," she said, "now fix the camp thing." And that little word thing did me a favor because it told me nothing had been understood at all. I came around the table and crouched down in front of my niece, eye level, the way I do with Caleb. "Madison," I said, "you don't owe me a performance, sweetheart. You never did." Something moved behind her face fast, like a fish under ice. Then I stood up and looked at my sister. "The answer is still no," I said. "It'll be no on Saturday, too, so you can save the gas." Vanessa gathered her purse with great ceremony and swept her daughter out through my lobby, but Madison looked back at me through the glass door, one long look over her shoulder. It wasn't anger. It was a question. Thursday night, my Aunt Carol called, my mother's younger sister, the one who moved one town over decades ago and got herself classified as difficult, which in my family means she asks follow-up questions. "Well," she said, "somebody finally said it out loud." And then Carol gave me the history lesson I'd spent 30 years half knowing and carefully not assembling. "You think this started with Madison?" she said. "Honey, This is a rerun. And she walked me through it. The years when every dollar in my parents' house was sorted by one rule: coaches in 3 cities, motel weekends for tournaments, gas money, entry fees, a racket that cost more than the mortgage payment, and when the numbers got tight, the account that got emptied quietly, without a family meeting, was the one with my name on it, the college fund. I knew it was gone. I'd known at 17 when I was told. With a shrug, I never forgot that I was the resourceful one and I'd land fine. What I'd never let myself see was the wording of the rule that emptied it. This family invests in its stars. Meaning, the other child pays her share in service. I put myself through Ohio State on scholarships and 2 jobs, waiting tables and filing at a tax office. I called it independence for 20 years because that word kept me upright. Carol's voice went gentle. You weren't the daughter, honey, she said. You were the revenue. After we hung up, I sat in the dark and did the thing I do. I ran the numbers. My sister was 19 when the shoulder ended it, and nobody ever taught her a plan B. She wasn't the author of this system. She was its first casualty. And that thought scared me more than my anger ever had. Friday, 1 in the morning. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I let it go to voicemail. And in the morning, I listened to my sister's voice without any of its armor. She'd been crying. The real kind. The kind that ruins your consonants. I want to give it to you, the way I heard it. Because for about 90 seconds, my sister told the truth. I was 19, she said, when they told me the money was gone. All of it. Mine, yours. Everything gone into my shoulder, and my shoulder was garbage now. So what was I? Nobody ever taught me how to be a person who pays for things. Sophia, they taught me how to be paid for. You learned checkbooks and I learned applause. And applause doesn't refill. I don't know how to do what you do. I have never known. There was a long pause, then 10 seconds of my sister breathing, and I stood at my kitchen sink listening to it, and I cried once quietly for the 19-year-old on the other end. Of 20 years, and then she inhaled and finished the message. And the window closed like weather. So you have to fix the camp, she said, voice hardening back into its shape. You owe Madison that? You're the one who can. So you're the one who has to. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Delete or save? The robot asked me. I saved it. I listened to it twice more that day, both halves, the drowning and the grabbing, and I understood my sister completely for the first time in my life. She was going under, and she'd been going under since before Madison was born. But you can't save someone whose plan is to pull your child under with her. Here's what they don't put in the brochure about boundaries. The invoice arrives immediately, and it isn't itemized. That week, the casseroles of my life quietly stopped. A neighbor who has waved at me for 6 years looked at her mailbox while I drove past because she'd heard the church version, in which I abandoned my family over a little spilled dirt. The Tuesday pickup, the one my parents had done during tax season since the funeral evaporated without a text. I rearranged my client meetings, hired my office manager's college-age daughter for after-school hours, and paid her a fair wage, which I noted grimly was still cheaper than the old arrangement. But the bill that actually hurt came at bedtime on Thursday, when Caleb, who notices everything and mentions 10% of it, looked up from his dinosaur book and asked, "Are we not going to Grandma's anymore?" And I gave him the 8-year-old true version, which I'd rehearsed in the shower like a coward. I said Grandma and I disagreed about something important, and grown-ups sometimes need space to think. And none of it was his fault or Madison's. He took this in, nodded, and said, "Okay." Then at the door, the follow-up he'd been holding, the one that put a hairline crack straight through me. Is it because of my party? I want to pause one more time because this right here is where most people fold. And I'll never judge a single one of them again. The silence from your own mother, the neighbors with the mailboxes, your kid connecting dots in the dark. If you have ever held a line while your whole family called the line the betrayal, type "I held" in the comments because somebody reading them tonight is at day 2 and needs to see your receipts. And subscribe, because the dinner invitation, sitting on my counter that night, was the most dangerous thing my mother ever cooked. I sat on the edge of my son's bed and told him the truest thing I said all month: your party is where I finally woke up. Buddy, that's the opposite of your fault. Friday at noon, the day before the dinner, my father showed up at my office alone, and I cannot overstate the strangeness of that sentence. Frank Parker does not go places alone. He is a retired machinist who has spent 40 years positioned carefully out of the crossfire at grills, in garages, behind newspapers. He sat across my desk, holding his cap in both hands like a man at a hearing, and he told me 3 things. First, the phone. It was your mother's promise, he said. Her card? Her idea. Bought it Thursday before the party even happened. Vanessa knew by Friday. I told your mother it was wrong. I told her quiet. He looked at his hands. Quiet never stopped your mother once in 40 years. Second, the thing he'd been carrying since I was 17. We spent your college money and called it family strategy. I watched you carry 2 jobs through school, and I set my jaw and said, she's tough. She land. He made himself look at me. I have been ashamed since before you even knew. Sophia, I'm not asking you to fix that. There's no fixing that. Then the third thing, and this is the one I didn't see coming. I braced for the pitch. Come Saturday, keep the peace. She's still your mother. Instead, my father leaned forward and said, don't you come to that table and pay? If you pay again, it never ends. It just changes shape. I'm 66 and I know exactly what I bought with my quiet, so don't you buy it, too. Then he stood, put his cap on, and left through my lobby. My father, the quietest man alive, had just told me to stand. Now I had to find out whether I could. My mother called Friday evening to confirm dinner, and she used her treasurer voice, the one with the agenda paper-clipped behind it. 6 o'clock, she said, pot roast, everyone will be there, and here is what's going to happen. We are going to put this ugliness behind us. You'll reinstate the camp. Madison shouldn't lose her summer over a squabble between adults. You'll rebook the trip. The whole family's been looking forward to it, and we can discuss the academy calmly, like a family, after everyone's eaten. Then all of this is forgotten, sweetheart. Every word, clean slate. I said nothing, which she took as progress, so she laid the last card down with the gentleness of a woman who has been closing deals at kitchen tables for 40 years. Or don't come, she said, and if that's your choice, don't come at Christmas either. I won't have you at my table part-time. There it was. Terms and conditions. Love as a subscription service. And my seat at the family table listed at its actual price for the first time, roughly $13,000 a year, plus a $25,000 balloon payment. Renewable, annually, forever. What she was offering was everything I'd been terrified of losing since the funeral. Grandparents, for Caleb. Christmas mornings with cousins. The photograph of a whole family, everyone in the frame. All of it back tomorrow for the standard fee. She hung up before I could answer. My mother always hangs up first. It's how she keeps the last word on layaway. I stood in my kitchen holding the dead phone, and across the room on the refrigerator, Caleb's birthday schedule was still taped up. Hot dogs, sprinkler, family at 2, cake at 3. And next to that fridge, I'd canceled $50,000 of make-believe. One night left to decide which woman was walking into that dinner. I'm going to tell you the part I'm least proud of. Because you've stayed with me this long, and you've earned the whole ledger. Friday night, close to midnight, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the camp portal. And my cursor sat on the reinstate button for a long time. My reasons scrolled like fine print, nobody reads. Madison didn't design the deal. 12-year-olds take the currency offered. That's what childhood is. She was good, actually good, and her summer was about to become the ash of a war she didn't start. One click, $4,200. And one child at least comes out of this hole. That's how it always starts, isn't it? One click for the child. Then a floorboard creaked, and Caleb patted in for a glass of water, saw the screen over my shoulder, and read the logo. He didn't say anything at first, just filled his cup, drank half, and then asked in the flat, careful voice he gets when he already suspects the answer. Is that for Madison? Are you buying them back? 8 years old. I looked at my son, who 2 weeks ago watched a paid stranger wearing his cousin's face destroy his father's cake, and who was now watching his mother hover over the checkout button of the exact machine that had done it. And I heard the answer come out of me before I'd finished thinking it. Quiet, like a fact. Love isn't an invoice, buddy. Nobody gets to bill you for it, and you can't buy it back with camp. He nodded, unimpressed, the way kids nod at true things, and went to bed. I closed the laptop. Saturday evening, I put on the gray dress I wear for closing difficult accounts, and I drove to my mother's house, not to pay, to settle. My mother's house smelled like pot roast and ambush. The good tablecloth was out, the one that appears for funerals, graduations, and sieges, and the table had been set with intent. Vanessa was already seated, sunglasses retired, wearing the expression of a woman who's been told the check is coming. Madison had been placed in the chair directly beside mine, which no one in that house does by accident. My Aunt Carol had been invited to, and she shot me a look across the room that said, I'm here as a witness. Order whatever you want. My father stood by the window, cap off, present in a way I couldn't remember him being at that table. Caleb was home with a sitter, and that decision I'd made in about 4 seconds. This table had never once been safe for children. It had only ever been safe for invoices. I sat down. I complimented the roast. My mother served everyone herself, orchestrating, radiating the terrible warmth she produces on days she expects to win. And beside her plate, face down but present, sat the Meridian brochure like a contract waiting for the dessert course. Small talk was performed. Carol's tomatoes were discussed at length, everyone grateful for the tomatoes. God bless the tomatoes. Under it all, one man's silence had changed frequency. My father watching me instead of the grass for the first time in my adult life. Then my mother folded her napkin, tapped it twice against the tablecloth, and said grace, even though we'd finished eating a second grace. Her own invention, in which she thanked God for family, for forgiveness, and for new beginnings. Amen went around the table like a signature loop, and then she reached for the brochure. She opened it flat between the serving dishes and smoothed the crease with her thumb. And then she addressed the table like the chair of a board, recognizing an item of old business. We are prepared to put this behind us, she said. We, as though the family were affirming shares. Here is what reasonable looks like. The camp reinstated by Monday. The poor child's summer is hanging by a thread. The trip rebooked. The deposits are only money and memories are priceless. She actually said it again. Priceless over a brochure with a tuition schedule. And then we'll discuss Meridian like a family. Calmly, no more emails. She said emails the way other people say infestations. Then she nodded at Vanessa. And I watched my sister receive the cue exactly the way her daughter had received it in my conference room, and deliver the adult version of the same recital. I'm sorry things got out of hand at the party, Vanessa said to a point on the wall just above my head. Emotions were running high. We all could have handled things better. I counted the missing words while she talked. Mud was missing. Cake was missing. Paid was missing. Promised was missing. Phone was missing. David was missing. It was an apology with the serial numbers filed off. And when it was over, she looked on reflex to our mother and got the small approving nod, and something in my chest went very still and very clear, like water, finally freezing all the way through. My mother turned back to me and spread her hands open above the brochure. So, sweetheart, she said, are we a family or aren't we? Every face at the table turned to me, and even the pot roast seemed to wait. I put down my fork and I said the quietest thing I have ever said. I want to answer that question honestly, Mom, so I'm going to need you to hear the whole answer. And the room let me have the floor, mostly out of shock. For 4 years, since the week we buried David, I have paid this family just over $50,000. Tennis, camps, a phone, a transmission, groceries, light bills. I never asked for thanks. I told myself it was love, and for me, it was. Then 3 weeks ago, I said no to one loan, one time, one no. And inside 7 days, a 12-year-old was offered a phone to walk across a birthday party and dump mud on a dead man's cake in front of his son. I turned to Madison because she'd gone pale, and this part belonged to her. None of this is your fault, I said gently, looking right at her. Not the party, not the phone, not this dinner. Adults did this. Adults built the whole machine, sweetheart. And adults handed you the bucket. My door will be open to you every day of your life. My wallet won't be. You'll understand the difference someday, and I hope you learn it a whole lot cheaper than I did. Then I turned back to my mother, who had begun at volume the speech about everything this family has done, and I did what I'd promised myself in the car. I did not raise my voice, and I did not lower my eyes. Mom, I finally closed out the account this spring, and here's the audit. I wasn't a daughter to you. I was a bank, and the bank is closed. Vanessa's chair scraped back. You owe us, she said, and her voice had the crack in it from the voicemail. You're the one who can, so you're the one who has to. I took a folded note from my purse and set it by her plate, a name and a phone number in my handwriting. One of my clients needs a full-time office manager, I said. Real salary, real insurance. I already told her about you, the shoulder, all of it, and she wants to meet you Tuesday. That's what I have left to give. Vanessa, a door, instead of a check. My mother stood up. If you walk out now, she said, don't you walk back in at Christmas. I picked up my purse, and I felt the price of the next sentence and paid it anyway. You were right at the party, Mom, I said. It was just cake, and it was never about the cake. Then I thanked my father for dinner, and I walked out of my childhood home, past the graduation photos and the trophy shelf, through the front door, and the screen door clicked shut behind me. Softest sound I ever heard. Loudest thing I ever did. I made it 2 blocks before I had to pull over on Sycamore under a streetlight because my hands had started shaking on the wheel like they'd been saving it up, and I cried for about 10 minutes, the ugly kind, forehead on my knuckles. Hazards ticking. I want to be precise about those tears because precision is what I have instead of poetry. I wasn't crying for the family I'd just lost at that table. I was crying for the family I'd spent 4 years trying to buy. The one made of pot roasts and swallowed words and a seat I kept renting at full price. The one that had never existed and was never going to, at any price, and some part of me had known it the whole time and kept paying anyway. The way you keep watering a plastic plant because the watering is the only part that feels like yours. Grief and relief came out in the same breath. They shared a checkbook, it turns out, and both of them were finally settling up. Then I drove home to the family that did exist. Caleb was on the couch in his pajamas, sitting with the sitter, and he looked up when I came in and read my face with that terrible 8-year-old accuracy. We sent the sitter home and ate cereal at 9 o'clock at night, the two of us at the kitchen table where all of this had been decided. And it was the best dinner I had all month. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. Vanessa, I braced, and then I read it. Did you mean it? The job. I typed back the client's name and the number and nothing else. And I hit send before I could add a lecture to it. Some doors you just hold open. You don't also narrate them. Here's the accounting. 90 days out. Because I know you want the numbers, and I'm the woman who will always give them to you. Vanessa took the job. Office manager, full-time, real paycheck. The first one of her adult life, that didn't root through our mother's mythology. She never thanked me, which honestly was correct. Thanks would have made it a favor, and favors were the old currency. She just showed up on time every day, and kept showing up. And my client says she runs that front office like a seated player. Which I chose to find funny. Madison kept her phone, the screen fixed on Vanessa's dime. The line moved to Vanessa's plan. She plays at the community courts now, and her mother sits through every practice because it turns out watching is free. My mother kept her word with the discipline she brings to everything. Silence, total, curated. Christmas, we'll have an empty chair where the checkbook used to sit. And I'd be lying if I said that didn't ache at odd hours. The force I grew up under didn't die at that table. It just lost its last paying customer, and my father, my quiet father, shows up at my house every single Tuesday at 3 to pick up Caleb from school. His own idea, his own gas. Because Tuesdays, he told me, cap in hand on my porch. Our hours. The old club autopay is still $650 a month, by the way. It just goes into Caleb's college fund now. Same amount, different future. 2 weeks after that dinner, on an ordinary Saturday, we threw the do-over party. Same backyard, same dinosaur banner patched with tape where June had worn it. 6 kids, hot dogs, the sprinkler going by 2. Caleb and I baked the cake together on Friday night. The tin box down from the shelf. David's handwriting racing uphill toward the good part, and this one came out lopsided, leaning gently to the left like it was listening to something. Caleb piped the number 8 himself again, steadier this time, and declared the lean made it aerodynamic. My father came and worked the grill and took 200 photographs of children who were not holding still. Aunt Carol brought tomatoes. Nobody at that party had been paid to be there. And you could taste it. I swear you could taste it in the frosting. Then in October, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. My name in careful round 12-year-old handwriting. Inside was a drawing to kids at a table. A cake between them with 8 crooked candles and under it. In pencil pressed hard enough to groove the paper. I'm sorry about the cake. For real, nobody paid me to say that. I stood at my mailbox on a Tuesday in October and read that last line 4 times. Then I wrote back 1 line of my own and mailed it the next morning. I know, sweetheart. That's exactly how I can tell it's true. Here is what 4 years and $50,000 finally taught me, and I'll keep it to 1 sentence you can take with you. Love isn't an invoice. And the moment somebody hands you a bill for it, what you're holding isn't love anymore. It's rent. That's my story. 1 bucket of mud, 1 spreadsheet, 1 quiet dinner where I stopped paying rent on my own family. If this reminded you of an account you've been afraid to add up, take it as your sign and hit some. If you know a woman who's been the family bank too long, share this with her. Drop the word mud in the comments. Hit subscribe. And I'll see you in the next story. This story is a dramatized narrative created for entertainment and reflection. Any resemblance to real events or persons is coincidental. Sometimes people lose access to you, not because you stopped mattering, but because you finally understood that love should never require you to accept endless harm.